Well, good morning. So we've been talking about Gary Chapman's book, The Five Love Languages, and today we're going to look at number 4, acts of service. And he says, by acts of service, I mean doing things you know your spouse would like you to do. Makes sense? The caveat, of course, being no one likes to be forced to do anything. In fact, love is always freely given. Love cannot be demanded. We can request things of each other, but we must never demand anything. Requests give direction to love, but demands stop the flow of love. And he goes on to say, each of us must daily decide to love or not love our spouses. But if we choose to love, then expressing it in the way in which our spouse requests will make our love most effective emotionally. It just makes sense. The more you know about your partner, then to show love, do what you know that they would like you to do. And he says, like the other love languages, acts of service have their own dialect. And he gives the example of a couple who are doing things for each other, but not the most important thing. And what obviously was important to one person might not be important to the other. So it's important to find out what fills up your partner's love tank. And another interesting insight he comes up with is that often your partner's criticisms of you, of your behavior, provide you with a clue to your partner's primary love language. All right? If they criticize, well, you're not doing something, then that might be their love language, is to do something. Hendricks talks about criticism as a clue to sometimes our own, what's missing for us too. We criticize in our partner what sometimes we're missing in ourselves. That's a whole other deal. Anyway, so he goes on to say, and remember this is 30 years ago, he says, one of the problems around learning the love language of acts of service is that there's no longer a common stereotype of the male and female roles in today's society. You know, what worked for your parents, the man, goes to the office and does all the stuff or the work, and then the woman stays home. Those kind of stereotypes no longer work. And obviously, sociological change hasn't lessened in the last 30 years. So that's a problem. And then there's no doubt about it, we're influenced by the patterns of our parents around acts of service. But obviously we can also learn new patterns. And I always use the example of, I trained as an Adlerian, and Alfred Adler had the great saying years ago, it's not what you possess, but how you use it. And I always use the example of Terry Fox, the young Canadian who lost a leg to cancer and decided to run across Canada to raise money for cancer research. Whereas another young person could lose a leg to cancer and say, well, life's not fair. So they both possess the same thing, but use it quite differently. And the same with us. Fox can't change the cancer or the loss of the leg, but what he did, pretty impressive. Same with us. We can't change how we were brought up or what was modeled for us as children. But what we choose to do now, we have more choice over. All right? And he goes on to say, learning the primary love language of your spouse and choosing to speak it makes a tremendous difference in the emotional climate of a marriage. And I'm sure all of you would agree with that. Okay, so then next week we'll take a look at the last of the 5 love languages, physical touch. All right? Have a great week. Cheers.